In 2021, I interviewed representatives of Maine's fishing associations who are all committed to protecting the Gulf of Maine from industrial pollution. This is an excerpt of one of those conversations.
My name is Virginia Olsen, and I'm from Stonington. I'm a lobster fisherman. I go between the District 4 and the union members themselves, and the union members own their own lobster company, Lobster 207. It's a co-op, and I go in between the members and the business. The union formed in 2012 because the price dropped dramatically, and fishermen reached out to the union members at Bath Iron Works, and they contacted District 4, and that started the formation of our group. We started because we wanted to do different advocacy things. We do a lot at the State House, and then we decided to purchase our own lobster facility. Not all of our members sell to Lobster 207, but we do have a good variety of membership up and down the coast. We pick up and have different buying stations throughout the coast of Maine. We have a great online ordering business. We have our union brothers and sisters with UPS deliver our product. So it is literally from the ocean floor to your door, all union, which is really nice for us. Right now, our three biggest things that we're dealing with are offshore wind, North Atlantic right whale regulations, and industrial aquaculture. Foreign companies in aquaculture coming in and occupying large portions of our bottom. We support small-scale aquaculture. We have a lot of fishermen that, grow oysters and do kelp and seaweed and mussels. We support that 100%, but when we have larger companies coming in that change our water quality, something that's very important to us as fishermen, that's an issue. A lot of people look at our industry and see this huge Gulf of Maine and feel like we can go wherever it is in that Gulf and fish, and we can't. We have very select space that we can fish, that we're authorized to do that. As all these different industries start coming into our industry, that puts different pressures on the fisheries that we've worked very hard to keep sustainable. We have a lot of concerns about offshore wind and what impacts that will have on the lobster industry, the EMF, the electromagnetic fields that the cables produce. We're seeing things like off from Block Island project in Rhode Island, where crabs are coming in and being drawn to that cable. But then they get to the cable and they just stop. They're mesmerized by that field. They're not feeding, they're not breeding, they're doing nothing but just sitting there dormant. We're very concerned that that may happen with lobster. Lobster is an economic driver for the state of Maine. The further east you go in the state, we have less opportunities for employment. We don't have the economic viability that we have in southern Maine. So lobstering is really a big deal. It is what keeps our coastal communities vital. I live in Stonington, Maine, and in our town alone, it's 76 or 78% of the revenues that operate our town come from lobstering. If we have big shifts in our industry, it will cripple my town. My dad, my brother, my niece, my son, both of my grandparents, all fishermen. My great-grandfathers, both of them were fishermen. My son just had a son, and I know that he would love to teach him this industry, but he's very concerned about what the future is. So by 2050, we will have double the tonnage of global plastic from the turbine, as well as solar. The harvesting and collection of these materials, like just the raw tonnage of materials to create them, were 30,000 tons of iron ore, 50,000 tons of concrete, and 9,000 tons of non-recyclable plastics. And that was for 100 megawatts. So in comparison, that's about 10 to 16 turbines. All of that would encompass just about the research array, and that would equate to all of those tons of products that would need to be mined. And they won't be mined in places that already have some sort of footprint. These are places that are in third world countries that have never seen any humans. It's going to be a bigger global impact than a lot of people realize. I think that they just see that it's not oil or gas and it's going to be a clean, green energy, and that's just not the case. And that's very troublesome in itself because it's kind of sold as this package of something that is going to be great for our environment, but in actuality there's some real concerns on how we get to the construction of that turbine. A lot of these things are rare earth minerals, so in the mining they'll be looking for like cobalt, lithium, and dysprasium for the batteries that will house this energy, because there's a capture rate that we can't exceed. It's just physics. For offshore wind, we're looking at like the best amount of energy we can capture from offshore wind is at 60%. Right now we're at 45%. We're already, our technology has come to the point that we can capture 45% of energy through a wind turbine. The very best case scenario, we can get to 60. And that's only if we've got the best conditions of wind blowing. We can only capture it when the wind blows. Solar will only work when the sun is shining. So we have to rely on batteries to be able to store that energy for when we need it. In the research array, if we can produce 100 megawatts, we would be able to produce energy for about 75,000 homes. Tesla has the biggest battery plant around. It's in Nevada. Science tells us that it would take 500 years for them to build a plant to house the energy needed for one day in the United States. 500 years. So I just think that we need to have some common sense in where we're going and just be practical about this whole process. And I think for the fishermen, we went into this research array being very skeptical, but hoping. We were told that if we did this process that it would slow down BOEM's leasing of offshore. And we haven't made it into this winter yet in the research array project, and BOEM's already put their catalog for offshore leases up. I think that the industry was very hesitant about being involved in any of this process, but felt that if we weren't, we wouldn't have any voice. So we've all kind of reluctantly come to the table to say, we don't want it, but we need to know what the impacts are. We know from every other project around the world that it's not been this great present in this beautiful box. There's been all of these issues that have arisen. I just really would like to see there be some sort of caution there to just slow this process down before we destroy an industry that so many Mainers depend on. And it means so much more to Maine than just their fishermen. And it just really is troublesome that our administration is pushing this so hard.
But now Governor Mills' office is announcing a big plan for how it wants to move forward with offshore wind development.
Maine has the tremendous potential to become a global leader in offshore wind.
Governor Janet Mills announcing big plans for offshore wind to a nationwide conference on wind power.
We know what the problem is. The stranglehold that fossil fuel companies have on our state and on our people.
The governor says ongoing high rates for heating oil is hurting Maine families and that they're in need of an alternative.
I want them to have the benefit of inexpensive, clean power generated right here in our own backyard.
This is great for the people that are installing it. It's great for the people that are investing in it to get it where it's at. But the people that are the foreign companies that are putting this together, as soon as it's up, they're going to leave. And it is not a sustainable industry for Mainers. It isn't for our fishermen. For us, when I talk about sustainability, I talk about hauling a lobster trap up that has got 30 lobsters in it, and we measure all of those lobsters and take 5 of that 30 and put them in a lobster box to sell. and take the other 25 and put them back in the ocean because they're too small, or they're breeders and we V-notch their tail, or they're too large and we can't keep them. That's what I mean by sustainable. I think sustainable is kind of like that buzzword that everybody uses, and that's, you know, it's very, very different when we're talking about like green energy and a sustainable fishery. So our fishery is sustainable because we fish in designated areas. We don't let everybody that would like to fish in. We have a very specific process that lets fishermen in. They have to actually work on a boat and apprentice to get there. They go on a list, so we have so many people that leave the fishery before someone can come in. Our children that do their apprentice and start fishing at a young age can come into the fishery, but it is very regulated for us as fishermen. And for us, you know, what they call a green energy coming in is just not what they're billing it as. This green energy just is not green.